Okay, so I'm not going to give a dictionary definition. I think we all have a sense of what it is we're looking at when we talk about self-compassion. And in the simplest of layman's terms, I would say it's you treating you in a way that's kind and loving and respectful and forgiving and all the things that you would do for your own friend. I like to say friend instead of partner, instead of child, for the reason you're probably thinking. It is so much easier to be kind to a friend all the time than it is to your partner or your kids, typically. Okay, so I'm going to discuss any of the questions or thoughts that you have at the end, but I'm going to share 3 stories, one about anger, one about doubt, and one about not good enough. Of course, when we're talking about self-compassion, we're really talking about addressing all the big emotions, but we have a lot of emotions. And so I'm going to go into just 3. Someone brought up a big emotion of fear of failure as well. And though it might not necessarily be the same, we could possibly tie it with that not good enough feeling. Sometimes that's the root. Okay. If any of you have read my story or heard me speak my story along the way, it started with this story of anger. Now, of course, I've had a few more anger moments with my kids than just this one. But there was a moment in about my 3rd year of homeschooling, and it was in a January, February, like today. And I was homeschooling all 4 kids. They were about 9 to 1, 9 years to 1 year's age. And we were in a different town. We didn't live there. We were traveling, and I just generally felt overwhelmed. But that overwhelm manifested in anger. And I definitely remember threatening and saying, that's it, I'm done homeschooling. And it wasn't just a cute story. I was very upset. There was probably anger. There was probably kids bickering or complaining about not wanting to do something again, or I don't know, disrespect, all sorts of things that could have been going on. But I remember feeling overwhelmed and remember thinking that I really don't want this anymore. This has to change. And I wanted to homeschool, but I didn't want this. I don't know if you've been there. I'm going to guess probably if you've done this for more than a few months. I've had that moment a few times, not just once, by the way. I've had it a few times, but there was a very significant moment that compelled me in that 3rd year to reach out to someone. And I remember talking to a friend, and she pointed me in the direction of Brene Brown, of a TEDx talk. And I can't tell you what it was that she said that was powerful for me, but there was some reminder to me that I just wasn't even looking at my needs or what I wanted. Didn't happen in my world at that time. All I thought was, I need to help my kids and give my kids and nurture my kids, whatever they need. And because I took on this homeschool thing, it was all the things. So I also remember many moments of doubt, especially in the first few years. I did 2 years of research before I homeschooled. I had this notion that I wouldn't homeschool until I was fully clear on all the ways that I would engage it. I'd have the full routine, I'd decide on my curriculum, all of that. So I did 2 years of research. And when we finally went into it, I had a classical private school in my home. You can see where that's going. But because I had that, I think I thought I could curb my sense of doubt, that I wouldn't feel uncertain because I had planned everything out. I had created all these different routines to make sure that the best education would happen. Except other people asked me about it, as you know, whether it was just a snide remark from a cousin or it was a grocery store person that commented once randomly, never met the person ever, and they told me that I should put my kids in school. And it made me wonder, if the entire culture is thinking I'm doing this thing wrong, maybe I am. And of course, there were so many moments with well-meaning family members or going online and discovering the things that people were doing that just made me go, I don't know that this is going to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. And not far behind is my story of not good enough. which really just feels like a deep sense of insecurity about how I'm engaging my kids, or am I choosing the right curriculum, or am I doing the routine right, or just an inner gnawing that this isn't good enough. And the more that I've spoken with moms, I've learned that not good enough thing, a lot of moms have a hard time really placing and deciding what exactly it is that they think is not good enough. It's not usually that they're not allowing or enabling their kids to have opportunities to learn. No, they're doing it in spades. And they also happen to know that they're doing it in spades compared to most schools that are offering learning. They're doing all sorts of things for their kids. But oftentimes there is an inner gnawing, an inner insecurity that we're just not doing it good enough. And we can't put a finger on what it is. Been there, done that, trying to prove myself to those people I spoke to that would tell me that I had a reason to doubt. In my head, as I walked away, or in my head as I was addressing those people, I just wanted them to encourage me, but I felt angry and defensive that they weren't giving me what I needed, support. And yet I'd walk away, and in my head, I'd create a 3-point essay to come back to them another time and tell them why they were wrong. And that may have been the reason, or part of the reason why I have written so often, is to convince myself why it worked. Well, if you haven't met me already, you know, or I'll tell you that I have 4 kids, and they're now aged 14 to almost 22, and it works. I now know it definitely works, this homeschool thing. And I'll tell you straight up, I don't think anyone can do it good enough, because I don't think good enough actually has a rubric behind it. I think it's just an inner gnawing or an inner insecurity. So I'm going to ask for us to stop for a minute and write in your phone or write on a journal or piece of paper, what is the big emotion that you feel you really need to address, the thing that brought you here. So I'll give you a minute to write. Okay. If we haven't met before, you're also welcome to connect with me. I have a Calendly link that I opened up this last week beyond Tuesday afternoons, because I can see that time zones aren't always working for people. And you're welcome to connect with me and try to unravel a specific scenario. So what's going to happen today? I'm going to offer you 5 strategies that you can use to address your big emotions. Over and over and over, I hear people online or just in the world, in parenting world, talk about how to address your big emotion or your children's big emotions. And of course, I think it's valuable. However, I have learned, turns out we haven't learned that yet. And so how are we going to do that? How are we going to hold that energy with our kids when we haven't learned how to hold it for ourselves? And there's all sorts of reasons why we haven't learned to hold it for ourselves. I know I come from a family scenario that didn't honor emotions, didn't talk about emotions, or if somebody had an emotion, it was one person in the home. And it was no fault of theirs. It wasn't intentional on their part, but it is what happened. And so then I didn't know what my emotions were. In fact, I really only learned it as I parented. And I've learned that you don't have to have my family story to not know how to deal with your emotions. So I work with homeschool moms to support them in all sorts of journeys that they have. I say, in order to really encapsulate all the things that I do, to help them live authentically, purposefully, and confidently. So in this scenario, when it comes to discussing our big emotions, I think this is the base scenario for us to bring in the greatest sense of satisfaction in our homes. We can't make utopia. I tried. and I'm sure that you all have been trying. It's not going to happen. We have things to learn and grow into, and so do our children. All of us have something to learn. Therefore, utopia is unreachable here. But we can do a few things to make things smoother and also to create a plan to address our big emotions. Because I don't know about you, but I know from my life, not just because I was attempting a private school in my home, but in general, I hear it all the time that homeschool moms don't even have time for a moment with coaches or with somebody in this scenario that says, hey, can I help you feel more at ease in your home and your homeschool life? Because I know we do. We have a lot of things going on. And even in this webinar, we're going to have people coming in saying, Mom, can you get me the Lego? I don't know, a snack. I know, I'm aware. It is happening all the time. And there's a reason that we don't have time to do this thing. It's true. We've got a lot of other stuff to do. But I would suggest to you, we don't have time not to. That self-awareness, building self-awareness and building in a plan to deal with the biggest things actually creates more space to do the things that you want, to live in a way you want, to experience the whole homeschool life in a bigger, more expansive way. Not utopia, but a little less frazzled. So I'm Teresa. I was once writing in my fruit orchard with my chickens pecking at my toes. And I wrote that book, The Homeschool Mamas Self-Care, Nurturing the Nurturer. It was one of 4 books that I could have written. And I decided to write in that direction because it was the most impacting experience for me, is actually addressing the things that mattered the most. And surprisingly, it wasn't the curriculum, it wasn't the routine, it wasn't deciding what homeschool co-op I should go to or all those things. It was really about, wait, who am I and how am I showing up? So I wrote the book, and then, truth between you and me, I've said this to this person even, I started a podcast so I could meet Julie Bogart. A little creepy, but I did, and twice have in my closet and once in this room. And it turns out I stayed with the podcasting because it is so gratifying. I can connect with a lot more people in a much bigger way. And not coincidentally, when I was a little girl, I used my tape recorder and made radio shows. And if you don't know what a tape recorder is, I'll tell you later. But I had fun with that. And it turns out I'm having fun in my closet still. No tape recorder. And then it turned into life coaching. I'd always been coaching, by the way, but I officially started life coaching over the last couple of years. So one of the moms that I've worked with, I'm going to share about her. She's got 3 kids. One of them has ADHD, and she has an unofficial assumption that she also has ADHD. And she is trying, she's the loveliest soul, and she's trying to connect in with her kids to give them what they need. She's very creative and artistic. She's got incredible ideas for learning opportunities, but she doesn't know how to keep her cool. And she's pretty much said it in those words. And I'll tell you, you wouldn't guess it at face value. You wouldn't guess it. And very, very few people I know have a real easy plan into not keeping their cool. They are, what I'm trying to say is that it's actually very easy for them to not keep their cool. So it turns out she spent 6 weeks with me, and she shared a story that I don't have easily on hand here, but she shared a story with me out of the blue after our time together and said, I want you to know about this moment where we all heard the alarm from my phone, and we stopped what we were doing and took a deep breath, 3 deep breaths, and asked ourselves how we were feeling. And I went, wow, that's amazing. From frenetic to peaceful. Her kids are really just something like 11, 9, and 5. And her experience of her homeschool life has been fun opportunities to learn, but a lot of emotional intensity, and doesn't know how to deal with her ADHD son. So it's women like those that I engage with in self-compassion coaching. And, some people will ask, why would I choose to coach with you? And straight up, you don't have to. And also, if I had somebody that had said the honest things to me, that they actually knew my experience, they've been there, done that, not just a therapist that is like this vague person over here, they would actually know what my life was like and also have walked the path, that would have meant a lot. Because even in my early years, I had a mentor, an unofficial mentor, someone that I wasn't even able to speak so openly about these things with and really hold space for me. But there was a person, she homeschooled very differently than me. She had a worldview that I didn't. And she had more kids than me, a lot more kids. And I have four. And she was an amazing mentor to me because she would always essentially say to me, it is working. It's not, will it work? It is working. There's no reason to doubt. I see what you're doing and it works. And it was really encouraging to me. Okay. So, first thing I'm going to tell you, just a quick win. If for some reason people are holding on at this point and they know that they need to go right away, I just want you to be, just tell you straight up that the biggest self-awareness tool that I have included in my life that I didn't even know that I was doing was journaling. Because like I said, I've been reading or writing and reading, but writing for a very, very long time. And back when I was, I don't know, 7, and I bought a journal with my very first um, money that my parents gave me. And it was a little green locked journal. And I would write every morning for years. I woke up, I made my bed, I brushed my teeth. That's all I had to say. And I really did write that over and over. So I am in awe that I actually had cavities at a certain point because I wrote that for so many years. And yet it began a practice for me of going inward and asking myself how I'm feeling. I didn't ask myself then, how are you feeling, little Teresa? I just wrote down what I did, how I felt, what was going on in my world. And it would seem like the simplest self-awareness strategy, except that you and I both know we don't usually have a lot of time to include those kinds of things. And also because we feel like we've got too much going on, it's just one too many things. Except when we put something down on a piece of paper and write it out, it does get clearer. Just like when you're speaking to a friend that is able to hold the emotion of what you're experiencing, or the paper, or whoever you're addressing that paper, the writing to, is actually able to hold what you're thinking. And over the course of time, the longer you journal, the more likely you're going to clarify what you're experiencing to get a little more clear. And for reasons I don't understand, the mere act of identifying what our emotions are helps to dispel the intensity. I would like to see the research, haven't seen the research, but I trust the researcher that in my last podcast episode, I shared a discussion on Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart, which does a deep dive into emotions. And she is a psychological researcher. And she says it's true. That's the experience in research, is that when you write things down, you are clarifying what you're feeling. So I encourage you, if that means just 5 minutes every morning, 2 sentences of how I'm feeling or what's going on every morning. And not coincidentally, the very first journal that I created was the Big Emotions Toolbox for Homeschool Moms, which I created last year. So, you know what I'm going to ask you to do? I'm looking at the things that I've written down, and I realize that some of it I can't read. So that's hilarious. But if you stopped the video right now, I would encourage you to check your journal and find a piece of paper or a journal and then write down what are your feelings right now. Over the course of, I think it's 15 years now, I've learned to put an alarm into my phone or my iPod, since my phone is new for me, and put an alarm on a certain time of day, what you believe to be the most challenging time of day. For me, it was 11 a.m. Monday mornings. Other people, it's arsenic hour, sometime at dinner time or half an hour before dinner, or any random time whatsoever. But put an alarm into your phone that says, breathe. And I'll guide you to what I do every day. So if you wouldn't mind closing your eyes and notice how you're feeling. So the alarm went off and it said breathe. So you breathe. Try to do it 3 times slow. Notice where you're feeling what you're feeling. Are you feeling something inside your tummy, in your chest, tingling in your hands? Just notice what you're feeling. Can you put a word to what you're feeling? When did you first start feeling that feeling today? Was there a story attached to that feeling, that first time you experienced that feeling? Did a child do something, or 2 kids fighting, or the phone rang before you got out of bed? What was happening before you experienced that feeling? Okay, you can open your eyes. Sometimes in the beginning, when we first start practicing something like that, it doesn't mean anything. We're like, cool, breathe, great. I remember someone saying, you need to practice breathing. And I was like, okay, I went to nursing school and I went to physiology class. And I know that if you aren't breathing, you did. So why am I practicing breathing? And if someone hasn't already spoken this to you, it is because when you breathe, you are slowing down all the physiological systems in your body. The anxious one, or the one that feels angry. It helps you to zone into what's really going on in here. That was a process I thought was super weird, by the way. What we just did, I would have thought that's kind of weird. And if it is useful for you in a different context, in just if it works for you to understand the process better in a prayer context, it might be useful for you to say, wait, I'm going to just be still right now. Just going to be still. Just going to connect in and be still. So over the course of time, you'll get a little clearer as to whatever the story is, because you might not in the beginning understand why that story compelled a feeling in your body or the experience that you're having in your head. But you do that often enough and the thing begins to unravel. The story begins to unravel. So let's see. We've practiced breathing. We've done a mindful moment every morning. And another thing that I also thought was hella weird was visualization. Have you heard of the concept of visualization or visualizing something? So I'm going to guess, put your hands up if this has ever happened to you. You've had a kid that did something after you've told them 1,000 times not to do it. I've had a few. It turns out we may have done 999 times more scolding than we needed to, because we need to come up with a plan to address whatever that scenario is. And if we are to visualize and actually see that, just imagine that scenario play out again. You've told your child no, and then they blow up. If you put yourself in the place of imagining, how are you going to respond to that scenario? How are you going to respond? Who is your best self, and how is your best self going to respond to that? If your goal isn't to react instantaneously, to be proactive instead of reactive, then what would your best self do in that moment? Certainly, me and everyone has a practice pattern of behaving in a way that we don't want, that usually makes us feel guilty or makes us feel like we failed in this mom thing. Reality is, we all make mistakes and we're all doing things in ways that don't serve ourselves or our kids. Yeah, you will. And yet we create these patterns over the course of time that are very familiar, and we don't know what else to do except this is what we do. Kid does this, we do that. And it compels a sense of guilt or shame or feeling like we're failing. So then what do we do with that feeling? What do we do with that experience? First, it takes time. It takes practice. The same amount of practice that you put in to creating habits that are not serving you or your family, similar amounts of time you need to actually put in practice to do something differently, which means that everyone is going to go, what's going on with mom? This is weird. Or how do we make her mad? Or how do we compel whatever the scenario is? How do we get her to do what we're used to her doing? They won't consciously be doing that, but a subconscious like, wait, what's going on? Mom's doing this differently. We've been creating these patterns that haven't been serving us, whether that's with our kids or with our partner or with our best friend or inside of ourselves. And that, as a self-compassion approach, we can do the worst damage to ourselves. There was a moment when I had a conflict with one of my kids, and I wish I could remember which one, but I had a moment with a child homeschooling, and I think I thought they were being disrespectful. It's probably a good guess. But I remember feeling so hot, so upset. All I could do was walk away. And so I walked away. I went to text my husband, and he wasn't available. So I texted my friend. She wasn't available. So I walked to the mirror, and I looked into the mirror, and I said to myself, oh, what do you need? And I could see the anger and I could see the sadness in my eyes. 30 seconds before, I was just mad. I was so upset. I walked away because I didn't want to be reactive, but I didn't know what to do. And as soon as I saw my face, it was like I was looking at my girlfriend, and I could see, I'm sorry. What a day. That really sucked. Well, I can see how angry you are, but I can see how sad you are too. And oh, you're not a horrible parent. You're not. This is really frustrating. Of course, it's frustrating. This kid did this thing to you. I'm so sorry that you're feeling the way you're feeling. There was something that happened because I looked into the mirror. Just because I looked into the mirror, it was like I was addressing myself or addressing a friend. And yet I was addressing myself. And I felt at ease again. Okay, take a deep breath. Hand on heart, what are you going to go do? What would be your best self choice in how you want to engage this? And did it happen the first time? Maybe, don't remember exactly, but on repeat, after a while, it's been a whole lot easier. I do have a list of affirmations. The most popular download that I have is affirmations for the Homeschool Mom's Soul. Now, I've actually asked permission from a website, I don't remember the name right now, but I essentially took their affirmations for moms and created a Homeschool Mom affirmation, one of the most popular affirmations or downloads that I have. And I think the reason some people don't like doing affirmations to themselves, they think it's cheesy, which I get. Except when you're with a girlfriend, you are essentially giving them affirmations. You're like, no, you're a good mom. I see what you're doing. You do that instinctively as an encourager. So why not you? One of the gals that I've coached, Carla, had said to me, I was in tears the first time I looked in the mirror and spoke these truths to myself, because sometimes we have never had someone speak those kinds of truths to us before. So wouldn't it be powerful if it was you speaking those truths, even if it was just one truth every morning? And the last thing that I wanted to share, because I do have many other affirmations or many other strategies for self-compassion, which I'm next Thursday, I'm going to offer an intensive, a 1.5 hour intensive where we can go in deep with the things that you would like to discuss if you'd like to join me. And then over the course of 5 weeks, we'll create a gentle accountability where we can essentially ask you, how's it going? And go deeper into the things that really matter there. But I've got a lot more self-compassion strategies. But so we've talked about a mindful moment. We've talked about journaling. We've talked about breathing and how to even do it. Visualization. Create an authentic, supportive community. If you don't have authentic, supportive friends right now, or someone that you can actually share openly and someone can say, yeah, I see how frustrated you are, and you're still doing a good job, girlfriend, then that's not the right community. If you know in your heart that they don't feel like they're really supportive, then they're probably not quite the right folks that need to be in support of you right now. And the other thing is to keep a record. If your experience, like somebody had said to me, shared before the event, and she's not here right now, but she said, I guess the biggest emotion is fear of failure. It's a struggle right now with my 10-year-old who thinks it's okay to be up in the middle of the night and then sleeps in, could be till 2 p.m. In fact, he's sleeping right now, she said. I know he needs sleep, but why is he up in the middle of the night? Then that becomes a repetitive pattern if I let him sleep in. And she tied that to her fear of failure. So then I would encourage her, obviously, to talk with me and ask, okay, what is the connection between this fear of failure and your child sleeping in? What is the thing that you think you're failing in? Because if you can't get clear and identify what it is, you won't know. And then the other thing is to write it down. Every time you feel like you're a failure, write it down. Write down what the scenario was, what you were telling yourself, and what you were feeling. You'll gain clarity in that. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording. So we talked, I think we actually ended up talking about 7 different strategies that you could use in a self-compassion towards yourself. But I'm going to stop the recording so that we can share our scenarios that we came to and do a little coaching around that.